I am Ginny Thrasher, 2016 Olympic champion in women's rifle shooting. At 19, I won the very first gold medal of the 2016 Olympic Games. I was a freshman in college at WVU and it changed my life forever. Now, I am a full-time professional athlete at the Olympic Training Center in Cuz. My job includes training, traveling, and competing to the best of my abilities to represent the U.S. It also includes advocating for and educating about my niche sport, Olympic rifle shooting. Which is why I am here today. Ask me anything. P.S. I post a lot of fun videos about the shooting sports on my social media. Please follow me on every platform at Thrasher if you want to support my athletic journey. You can also join my Patreon fan club, patreon.com/teamthrasher (proof). Here's my proof. Edit. Thanks so much for joining me and all the great questions. I couldn't get to all of them, but feel free to message me on IG if you have more questions at Thrasher. I hope you now know more and are more interested in Olympic rifle shooting. Whether as a fan or competitor, we would love to have you. What was it like growing up with such a badass name? Pretty awesome actually, except when people would say Thrasher instead. Lol. I was voted the 8th coolest name in the Rio Olympics. As someone who greatly enjoys rifle shooting, I've always struggled with unsteady hands. Doesn't really diminish my enjoyment, but it certainly does impair my accuracy at longer ranges, 400 plus. Even when I'm shooting on a bench. What's your favorite tip for freehand accuracy? It's a very annoying answer, but the best way to get better is practice. But not just throwing shots downrange, deliberate, high-intensity practice. I'd recommend the books Bullseye Mind by Raymond Pryor and The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. What's the preparation like to remove shaky hands? I would guess skipping caffeine and getting enough sleep are two things. I don't drink any caffeine or eat added sugar. I also find breath control helps, but honestly shaky hands aren't a problem I deal with. It's mostly genetic. Great. Another Olympic sport I'm genetically predisposed to suck at. I'll add it to the list. So far my list contains all of them. Why aren't you a professional skateboarder? If anyone has a contact at Thrasher magazine, I would love to do an article where I teach Tony Hawk to shoot and he teaches me to skateboard. What's up with the leather outfits you guys wear? Kind of like cleats in track and field. They serve a variety of uses including injury prevention, stabilization, and allowing us to shoot for longer. They also have various accessories on them like a sling keep which attaches the sling used in prone and kneeling. They are tested very strictly for thickness, stiffness, and overlap at competitions to make sure no one has a performance advantage over anyone else. How often do you get know-nothing FUDs trying to correct your shooting form or help you with it? In person, almost never. On the internet, all the time unfortunately. People don't understand that different types of shooting require different techniques. Who is your favorite Pokémon? Squirtle. What's the best tips for rifle shooting? Particularly for beginners and/or people who are looking into the sport. Love the sport. Not just the outcomes of the sport. Find a good coach club team. I have a list of Olympic-style clubs on my IG under story highlight states. Practice more. Practice better. Improve your rifle IQ. Books, camps. Subscribe to Ginny's Patreon videos. How did you get involved with rifle shooting? My grandpa would always take my dad and brothers hunting. I wanted to be like them, so I asked to go hunting too. He was over the moon. I didn't really like hunting, but I enjoyed pulling the trigger. The next year I joined my high school's varsity air rifle team and took off from there. West Springfield HS and Nova. What's it like being at the top of a niche sport? Stars in popular sports like basketball or football rake in millions of dollars in sponsorships and salaries, but I imagine that careers in rifle shooting are more limited. It's very interesting actually. I am very famous to a very niche group of people, and the state of West Virginia. I have received a lot of amazing opportunities but not a lot of money compared to the big five sports, swimming, gymnastics, etc. I have the freedom to do what I want relatively anonymously, but also a large social media following where I can promote and grow my sport. I have no desire to be any more famous lol, but being rich would be great. The Army Marksmanship Unit, AMU, and being a resident at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center, OPTC, are very different post-college career paths with pros and cons. In the AMU, you have a lot of resources including equipment, a salary, etc. In exchange, you are enlisted in the Army. This means various Army obligations, basic training, having to live near featuring Benning, etc. At the OPTC, you often have less financial security pay, including potentially having to pay out of pocket for healthcare and equipment. Every single resident at the OPTC has an additional source of income like private coaching, social media, etc. But you also have more freedom in which matches you go to, your training plans, how you spend your hours, etc. I often say that the AMU is a career and the OPTC is a transition period. You get free room and board and can be quite successful, but eventually you will move on to another job. Both have high expectations to performance and you can be very successful in either. I think it's about finding the right personality fit. I personally value my freedom and think I would struggle being enlisted in the Army. Biathlon is a completely different skill set that requires a different body type, tall with a cardiovascular base. It is more heavily weighted towards skiing. Typically it is cross-country skiers who are taught how to shoot. I personally have no interest in being cold and lying in the snow exhausted smiley face. I shoot other disciplines for fun and socially, not to cross-train. I cross-train in the weight room, with Pilates and ice skating. I am a Feinwerkbau loyalist for air rifle. I started with the P70 in high school, then the 700, 800, and am getting the brand new 900 in a few weeks. For my small bore I shoot a Bleicher. They are like the Ferraris of rifle. One of the coolest parts about Olympic sports in America is they have to use a trial system that is open to anyone to compete. This is good because it allows for the underdog Cinderella story American dream to happen, not pushing out the up-and-comers so that it's impossible to break in. When I was a freshman in college I won NCAAs, becoming the youngest person to ever do so. A few weeks later I went to Olympic trials mostly to gain experience for the next quad. There were 2 Olympians already in the field and I was probably ranked about 5th going in. This was 1 year after my first international match. I ended up winning the match and qualifying for the Olympics. I spent the summer training, competing around the world, under the tutelage of the best coaches in the country. I went into the Olympics as the total underdog and won quite unexpectedly, to the rest of the world. Me, my family, my coach, and my sports psych all knew it was possible. I typically don't talk about my politic beliefs in public because it often takes away from the fact that the shooting sports are sports and I am an athlete, not a politician. That being said, I have had several interesting experiences with politics over the last 10 years, including both parties trying, unsuccessfully, to make me a figurehead after the 2016 Olympics. I have traveled to a lot of other countries and seen their gun laws and also how they impact the sport. On one hand, stricter gun laws make it more difficult to do the sport. Especially in a place like Japan where the number of .22 gun licenses is very limited and age restricted. But in places like Germany, because air and .22 are the only disciplines available for someone who is interested in shooting, they are quite popular. In America where there are many options of different guns, calibers, and disciplines, it almost spreads out our talent too much, although everyone can find a style of shooting they enjoy. I think it is a nuanced conversation including the different types of gun cultures, the rate of technological advancement versus legislation, mental health resources, and education. This makes it a very challenging and involved problem in the U.S. that I am not qualified to speak on. Although I have experience and opinions on gun laws, I am not a policymaker and don't plan to instill myself in policy in any way. I am thankful, however, for all the experiences I have had around firearms and due to firearms, that I would not have had in every country. I do believe shooting should continue to be gender separate. There is a physical strength component to it, but more importantly there is a different timeline of when men and women peak in their career. Just like in other sports, there are different age divisions and putting a U18 girl against a U18 guy would be unfair, for the guy, who would get crushed. In the NCAA it is gender mixed and what typically happens is the women dominate the top 8 spots. The story of why it's gender mixed is interesting though. It used to be mixed but only men really competed. A woman by the name of Margaret Murdoch won a medal in the Olympics and soon after it was gender separated. And the most obvious reason? Gender separation means more events means more medals for shooting, increasing the popularity and general health of the sport.